Your Power, Your Community, a podcast by Jackson EMC.
I'm Karen Ewing, Community Relations Representative with Jackson EMC, and Jillian Vacha, a senior at North Gwinnett High School, is joining me today to talk about the Washington Youth Tour program. Jackson EMC sends 4 delegates who join almost 100 delegates from across Georgia. Other EMCs send delegates, and then you join more than 1,000 delegates from all over the nation in Washington, D.C. for a week-long leadership development program. How did you learn about Washington Youth Tour?
Yeah, so I first heard about it with my parents because my brother actually applied. But then that year I was reminded of it because my counselor posted on our Google Classroom. And so I clicked the link and I read about how EMCs were sending tons of kids to DC for a week-long trip where they did leadership development, they learned about politics and the government, and it was an all-expenses-paid trip. So that was obviously very enticing for me. And so I applied, and I think I had to write like a couple essays and send in teacher recommendations.
You've done lots of leadership opportunities. You just got back from Governor's Honors in chemistry. How does Washington Youth Tour differ from other leadership opportunities you've done?
I think just the amount of resources that EMCs pour into students when they're going on this youth tour is unlike anything else that I've experienced. It honestly it didn't feel like it was centered around leadership development, but just development of us as people. And I think it just taught a lot. The adults on the trip were very generous and they've treated us very maturely, and I didn't really feel like I was being herded around or anything like that. But they definitely also supported us, and I definitely think I learned a lot of leadership skills on that trip.
While you're on Washington Youth Tour, you see lots of our nation's capital, from the National Cathedral, the U.S. Capitol, Smithsonian museums. What was the most meaningful sight to you?
In my opinion, it was Mount Vernon, and I know a lot of my friends on the trip also agreed because that was our favorite stop on the whole trip, partly because of the really good food, but also
Food always helps.
But also since, it's the home of our nation's first president, and I think it's just really interesting how we got to see where our nation's government and essential structure really all started from. Just being that environment, it was very carefully preserved, it was very historical, lots of information was taught, we learned a lot there. And I think it's just a really, really unique environment to be in, and I think it's really important to see where things came from, and so seeing that was probably my favorite part.
You meet students from all across Georgia and the nation on this trip.
Mm-hmm.
How do you engage with students?
Yeah, I think one of the main activities that the EMCs themselves incorporated into the trip was pin trading, because each EMC got our own little pin that we got to trade, and I know Jackson's was very highly wanted because of how nice it was, but I think that was a very cool part of it. I still have all of my pins. I remember Montana being a really pretty one, but that was really nice because it gave us the chance to go up to people from different states, and it made it not awkward because we could just walk up to people and be like, hey, can I have your pin? And then that would start up another conversation. I think especially for Georgia in particular, it was really easy because we were all obviously together in one space. We were traveling around all day. So I know I made a ton of friends just talking on the bus or waiting in line for food or something like that. And I remember we had a lot of nights in hotels where we would all just go to one person's room and then just talk for a couple hours. So that was really nice, and I've really maintained those friendships since.
Each year, students send me photos, and I have their pictures in my office from different groups on Youth Tour. And the one I have last year from you was the text you sent to me with a selfie of Senator Ossoff. And I showed it around to the office. It was fun, and you were obviously having a great time. Tell us how that day transpired.
Yeah, so that day was easily the most exciting of the whole trip. It was the second to last one, so already everyone was buzzing with excitement because we were about to leave, and everyone was dressed up because that was the most formal day, and we were all wearing dresses and heels and all of that. And then I think earlier in that day we met some representatives from the House of Representatives, which was another really cool opportunity. And then I remember after we were like messing around in the room, pretending like we were giving speeches and stuff like that. So everyone was already having a good time. And then we went outside to like take the group picture out on the steps, and it was very hot. It was definitely in the 90s. So all of us were sweating and gross, and we were standing there for like at least an hour and a half, probably more. We watched all of the cars go by, and we kept thinking like every single black one was Senators Ossoff and Warnock, and we kept waiting for them to like come out, and it just never was them for like a solid few hours. But then they finally showed up, and everyone went crazy. Everyone started screaming and cheering and all of that. So obviously being around 70 other kids who are so excited really helps you get in the mood. But yeah, they were super, super interested in what we had to say. They spoke to us, they opened the forum to questions, and it was just really clear that they cared about youth and are advocates for youth involvement in politics and government, and they were very kind and just super interested in what we had to say and the things that we were passionate about. So that was really, really cool. And then they let us take pictures, so they were standing there as everybody like hoarded around them. So that was another really, really cool part of it. And I was mainly like trying to get in pictures, taking pictures of them, and right as Senator Ossoff was about to leave, I just jumped in front and snagged a few. And I actually remember, I think he said like, this is the last one I'm taking, so I felt really honored.
So what would you say to someone who is thinking about applying for Washington Youth Tour?
Yeah, I mean, any all expenses paid trip is immediately a highly sought opportunity, and one that's very valuable. And then one that also focuses on leadership development and helps you engage with kids from all across the state and the nation is super, super cool. And we get to go to fun things like Spy Museum and do dances on cruises and visit the entire Capitol. I mean, all of the monuments, everything. So it's a really, really unique opportunity, and I would recommend really pouring yourself into the application. I think that's the first step is always the most important. So I think really just reflecting on how you would contribute to the trip, how you would engage with other people, how what this trip would really offer you in terms of your whole life, not just like the 1 week that you're there, because that also really helps with the interview when you get to that next step. So really just taking the time to fill out the application in a sincere way, and make sure that you have teachers that you like for the teacher recommendation.
Jillian, you represented Jackson EMC with distinction, so we're very proud to call you a Washington Youth Tour alum from Jackson EMC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Your Power, Your Community, the Jackson EMC podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to hear more great stories like this one.
This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. All rights reserved.